Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the One Piece batch review for Jumputi Heroes, the One Piece Feature Festival #3, which is obviously going on the last week or so. Gonna go on for another week or so. And we have these new units, and I'm gonna tell you roughly what they do and whether they're good, whether they're bad, whatever. First thing I want to touch on, something we don't really talk about that much on here, but you know, we can see all the slots in the IDs for the characters. So for example, this Luffy, you can see his ID there, he is number 9, and the reason why he is number 9 is because series ID 001 is One Piece and 001 is version 1 Luffy. Then they always have a buffer space in between each version, so 003 is Gear 4, 005 is Snake Man, 007 is Gear 2, and then 009 is Monkey D. Luffy Taro. So, why is that important information? Well, you can see here that this Usopp, normally Usopp is 031. Then we've got this Usopp, Soge King, 035. That means that there is a version of Usopp that would have been 033 that we don't have. It was not added to the game and was not implemented in any way. I've said this before about, I think a Bleach event was originally scrapped and turned into multiple different smaller events so that they could work on a 1,000-year Blood War event for later this year. I think it's very likely that the same could have happened here with One Piece and could have happened with Dragon Ball as well, because I think that in their heads, they may have had ideas of what they wanted to do, but because of negative feedback from the community, they changed their ideas. This event is substantially different from what a lot of people expected it to be. I mean, the standard gacha has no Straw Hats in it, the Limiteds has no Straw Hats in it, there is a new Luffy, but he is a farmable free-to-play unit and he's a very good unit. So it's kind of like they've taken a completely different approach, and I think people are going to be pretty happy with it all in all. But you would say potentially they did have other things planned and they changed their mind, and I think that's probably what we're seeing here. Additionally, we have a space, 2 spaces to be specific. These are all in ID order of the new units that have been added. There are obviously other One Piece units, but between Katakuri and Vivi, the space in between there is another unit. We don't know who it is, but you can see here 0411 and 431. 431 and 411. There should be a 421 in there. We don't know who it is. Same between Reiju and Kazuki Oden. 441 and 461. Now, the chances are this is another element of this event that I think in particular makes it different, is because we know for a fact that they could have only planned this for not that long. You know, Kazuki Oden's quote, I mean, this is major spoilers for One Piece, by the way. If you're watching the anime, sorry. But Kazuki Oden's quote, plus some of the other information on him, like his special attack and stuff like that, this is all stuff from this year in the One Piece manga. It came out in, like, you know, we're talking chapters from January, February, March sort of time. The quote in particular is from the end of February. So it's very clear that they've only been planning this event for around 6 months or so. I mean, we've said before, they're working about 6 months to a year ahead of time. There's some things that they have made way earlier, and they just haven't found an opportunity to release it for one reason or another. But with specific events, especially for stuff like One Piece Day, they've got a date set for that, and we know roughly how far ahead of time they're working on units for that event that they have planned. So these spaces in the IDs could mean anything. Could be, you know, maybe there was another Limited and Catastrophe planned, and when they saw Oden in the manga, they were like, no, actually, we need to do Kazuki Oden instead. And that's why we have him and we have Kinemon, and potentially why there's 2 spaces there. I don't really know who it would have been. Obviously, it can't have been another Luffy, because then it would have an ID similar to a Luffy. But potentially, It can't have been Sanji either. It can't. I'm trying to. It can't be any of the Straw Hats because we have them all except Brook. So, well, I was gonna say it could have been like Judge. It could have been. I don't know who's like a super hype character. We don't have Jinbei. He's not really a super hype character, but we don't have Jinbei. You know, we know Rayleigh's got a completely different ID because he's on the Taiwan version. So there's a few different characters that could have been, but that's my hypothesis. I think they had this event mostly planned out. And the idea was they had it in their head they were going to do Kaido versus Luffy Taro. I think they already had that in their head. But with Oden and Kinemon, I think that's something they came up with later. That's my opinion. Anyway, let's talk about the new characters. First of all, I already said it. Luffy Taro, very good unit. Very good unit. He's a blue buffer on the front line, which means he boosts the ultimate attack damage for his team members, not just for himself. So, as a blue 99 luck lead, he is very, very good. His support is okay. Recovery down is not super common, but because it's not super common, characters that negate recovery down are also not particularly common. There's a few characters that do it universally, but in terms of just for blue type, I think Luffy Taro is the only one. And it does help him the fact that he is going to have better stats as a support than, like, if you put Sakura on a blue team or someone like that. Yes, you would negate it for blue team members, but she's supposed to be universal. She's a green type, so you won't get stat buffs from her. And he also reduces damage received by 870, goes up to 1280 at max. Pretty good. Pretty damn good if you ask me. Now, as for his passive, I think I think it's good. There are quite a few other characters that reduce burn, so it's not like anything groundbreaking, but I think it's nice that he's one of the better ones. They kind of had to make Luffy good, you know? If you're going to make a free Luffy, you kind of got to make him good so that people care. Because, you know, this is a character a lot of people are going to want to use because One Piece is so popular. So it just makes sense. He's definitely going to have his uses. For sure, he's definitely going to have his uses. In particular, he actually counters the Big Mom stage, which I think is kind of cool because obviously Snake Man is a blue unit that reduces burn damage. So, you know, you can use Luffy Taro and Snake Man in the same team to counter a Big Mom stage. They would be very effective against her. He would even be buffing Snake Man in order to make him more powerful. So, pretty good. I think all around he's a pretty strong unit. I don't really have much more to add, if I'm honest. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. I think a lot of people are going to be using him as their number one choice. 99 luck lead, and I wouldn't blame him. For Sogeking is not great. he's not great. For a start, he's a free burn unit, which I would say is pretty good, except there's quite a few units that are free to play and they burn. And even, you know, we got characters like the Taya from Yu-Gi-Oh!, the Kid Sasuke, Big Mom, Shishio Makoto. Like, there's loads of free-to-play burn units, and he doesn't burn by that much. Like, he's not, like, awful. He's not completely unusable, but I think because, obviously, he starts at a 3-star, goes up to 6-star, I know that shouldn't really matter, because at the end of the day, he is an event unit. So if he goes to 6-star, he should perform as a 6-star event unit. But I think that's something to bear in mind as to why he might not be as good as some of the other event units, because for me, that's not a great ultimate attack. And what I was hoping for was that he have a really good support skill. And he doesn't. He's a double booster, and he heals. I don't think it's like unusable or anything. There's definitely situations where you could use him and it'd be quite good because you get a bit of heal, you're getting 3 turns of each kind of boost. But I'm not a particularly big fan of abilities like this anyway. I'm not a big fan of the double boosters anyway. Because he's a free unit, his double boost is not that big. The extra recovery is nice. It kind of, I won't say makes up for it, but adds to it, makes it a little bit more desirable. In general, I don't imagine a situation where I would use him over basically any other support. And then passive, we've got Cyclone damage reduction. He's a weak version of one of the Gatch units from this event, Katakuri, who we'll talk about a little bit later. And he has a conditional ultimate attack damage boost. All in all, there might be situations where you might use him, especially on a stage of Cyclone damage, but realistically, I don't think he's very good. I'm personally not going to use him that much. I don't see many situations where anybody would need him. But you could use him. You could use him for some stages, I suppose. His buddy skill at least could be used in some places. But nah, for me, he's not that good. We then have... We're going to do the 3 units first, so we're not going to go in order. So we're going to jump to Nefertari Vivi, who I think is quite good for a Transcendent. I think for a Transcendent class event, she's got quite a nice kit. She negates attack down on herself, which is surprisingly rare. She's really the only viable free-to-play blue unit. Certainly the only viable, or the only free-to-play blue unit 99 luck that does this. Damage is obviously on the lower side because she's a Transcendent and she's only negating attack down for herself. But, you know, there are some stages where attack down is a real issue. She's going to help with that. You know, not so much because she's removing it from herself because you want her to do more damage, because she doesn't do a lot of damage. But on stages where you're worried about getting hit by an enemy that does boosted damage to attack down, she's getting rid of it from herself, so she's at least helping you out in that regard. So, good ult. Her support, she is a guard reducer. There are only 2 other characters in the game that reduce guard from support. I think there's 2, actually, at all. Not just from support, at all. And she is the only blue one. So very good. Very, very good. She also does some bubble conversion, which is pretty nice. And the cooldown's not too bad, 8-turn cooldown. Yeah, I think she's pretty good, especially if you're the kind of person who doesn't like to use, like, when you come up against an enemy with guard, rather than trying to set up a massive burst to try and, you know, with units that ignore guard or do boosted damage to guard, she can just reduce it, and then you can just use whichever units you want, because the enemy doesn't have their guard up anymore. So that one turn can make a big difference. So, very good support, very good support. And her passive is an unconditional attack boost and a bubble extension immunity. Bubble extension immunity is quite common, but I don't think she's that bad. I think as a front line, I think she's actually pretty good. Again, like I said, you know, her passive doesn't do anything particularly special, but I think there's definitely going to be stages where you're going to see some use out of her, but especially for her support. I think, you know, guard is not that uncommon anymore. So there are going to be situations where using her would be quite good. And as far as I know, all of the units that reduce guard is unconditional. So I think it's Warsman, Koichi, and Vivi. I don't think the enemy or your teammates or whatever need to be a certain type, certain class, whatever. So there might be stages where you use all 3 of them to get an enemy's guard right down by like 3 turns. And then you could set up your burst and do whatever you're going to do. So I think it's quite nice. I think it's quite... It's not necessarily something I'm going to get a lot of use out of immediately, but it's a nice tool to have in my toolkit. That's the way I like to look at it. So let's move on to... Who's the next free unit? Reiju. Reiju is... She could see some use. She could see some use. She is the strongest 99 luck yellow poison unit. There's a few units that inflict poison as yellow 99 lucks, but she's probably the only one nowadays that's viable as a front line because of how much extra damage she does. She's a newer unit. She's a 2020 unit, so she's probably the best choice if you're looking for poison damage. Bear in mind, the reason you might be looking for poison damage are if you have team members that do boosted damage to poison, or if you are trying to set up some kind of burst through a barrier or something like that where poison just kind of does damage. As far as I know, poison gets past damage reduction, barrier, and guard. I could be wrong on that. So she's pretty good for that. I think that alone makes her very nice as a free-to-play unit. And again, just because a unit's free-to-play doesn't mean that they're perfect as a front line, because say for example someone like, I think, is it Sasori or someone like that, there's another yellow unit that inflicts poison on front line, but they're like a tower unit or something. You can't get them to 99 luck, or I mean maybe you can, but you wouldn't get them to 99 luck. It's not like viable. So you would rather have Reiju doing that job, because she can take the 99 luck slot at the top of the team. There might be, you know, certain stages like the catastrophe where that doesn't matter, and then you would use, you know, whoever's strongest. But if you've got a 99 luck lead that can do the job, that's getting you boosted drops as well. So just a little thing to bear in mind. Her support recovers a bit of health, always nice. Reduces turns of poison for yellow team members, very nice, and reduce the number of bubbles required to create a skill bubble by 2 for 1 turn. Now, I've said before, and I still stand by it, the whole reduce by a certain amount for 1 turn, I think it goes up to 3 bubbles in 1 turn. When it's for 1 turn, it's not very good, because you can only, the best possible scenario is you use it on your top, as a support on your top character, and then you get 3 characters below that gets create a skill bubble a little bit cheaper than normal. But if they had just made it, instead of, even if it had just been down to 2 or to 1 for 2 turns, then straight away that's 7 characters that are benefiting from that. 7 characters potentially getting some cheap skill bubbles. Obviously it's not as good because it's not the same amount of reduction, but I will say this, the thing that kind of makes her support quite good is it's got a poison reduction, it's got a heal, and it's got a bubble extension reduction, which means that she kind of counters 2 different kinds of debuffs with 1 support. She counters poison and she counters bubble extension, because if an enemy is extending your bubbles, it doesn't really matter how much she reduces it by or for how long she reduces it by, because if she reduces it by anything or for any period of time, she is removing that debuff. So she removes that debuff, she can remove poison, and she can heal. I think pretty good. Again, it's only going to see certain use in certain situations, but no, I think going forward she's going to be, like I said with Vivi, a nice tool to have in the toolkit. And as for her passive, she has a HP restricted attack boost, which is not my favourite kind, but okay, and reduces the number of bubbles to negate bind, which bind reduction is very common, so that's not something that's like a must-have or anything like that. All in all, as a unit, considering the fact that she's an ultimate and not a catastrophe, I think she's pretty usable, but she's not quite up to the level of, say, Luffy Taro or someone like that. I think they're going to see way more use. But I can definitely see scenarios where you would want an enemy that a unit that poisons as a 99 luck unit, still does pretty decent damage for a free unit as well, and she negates bind, and she has like a pretty decent support. Yeah, I think there's definitely situations you'd get some use out of her. And now moving on to the final free unit, which is Kinemon. Now, Kinemon is quite similar, his ultimate attack is quite similar to Kanao Suyuri from Kimetsu no Yaiba. He will work well in teams like if you're running Tanjiro or someone like that, because he's going to be getting an additional buffed damage off of the burn that is inflicted by that character. So if Tanjiro drops a nice heavy burn on an enemy, Kinemon gets to do a bit extra damage. bear in mind, you're not really recruiting free-to-play units for their damage, but as far as a 99 luck unit goes, being able to inflict 350% damage is not bad. 350% damage is not bad. It's obviously not quite the heights of some of the limiteds and stuff we have now to do like 500% unconditional or whatever. But, you know, considering he's going to be a free unit, considering he's going to be 99 luck in a lot of situations, you know, some people won't be able to beat his stage as much, but if you can get to 99 luck, to be able to drop 350% damage if you have a burner in your team, I think pretty nice. And considering burn is quite a, you know, powerful debuff, because there's quite a few units that inflict it a high percentage. Yeah, I think it's not a bad front line at all. I think it's not a bad front line. His support, for me, this is really nothing special. I know there are certain situations where you need to get rid of green bubbles, get rid of yellow bubbles, whatever. But in those situations, it's better to have a conversion than a burst, because unless you've already set up a rate up or whatever, chances are the enemy, like, I'm trying to think of an example. I think it's, was it Katakuri stage or no, it's somebody else's stage. I don't know. There was a stage I was doing. Oh, I think it was Saga. It was Saga's stage. He's gonna absorb certain kinds of bubbles. So in theory, if you burst those bubbles, get them off your board, that would help you. Except he's given you a rate up of those bubbles. So if you burst them and get them off the board, more will spawn. So it doesn't really help you that much. So for me, that kind of bursts really aren't... I mean, they have their uses, but they're not that good. And plus, it's a 3-turn attack boost, which is okay. It's a 7-turn cooldown, so it's not, you know, it's not bad. 3-turn attack boost on a 7-turn cooldown plus some burst bubbles, but for me, that support is really nothing special. It really doesn't do a lot for me. I probably wouldn't use him. I can't see a situation where I would. But that's not to say that a situation might not come up in the future where a big burst could be useful. I don't know. But I don't think he's going to be that good on support. And his passive reduces the number of turns of weakening by 2 for this unit. That is not particularly common. That is not a particularly common thing for a 99 luck red unit to have. So he's probably going to be the best choice as a 99 luck lead in a red team where the enemy inflicts weakening. So that's good. And he has a conditional attack buff, which I don't like. But all in all, I think as a front line, he's good. He's going to see use on certain stages. And, you know, if you like Kinemon as a character, you could totally just run him as a front line. There's no reason. Like, obviously, there might be better options, but yeah, no, I think it's pretty good. The HP condition is annoying, but, you know, the attack buff's not that much to begin with. The support's not great. I think if you were going to be running him, it would be as a 99 luck lead, which is kind of a shame because I think 99 luck leads don't stand a test of time as long as for as long as characters that have a decent support. Because if you have a decent support, and I'm not talking about like an attack buff or whatever, but a character that does something, say for example Vivi that reduces guard. Not many characters do that, so if a situation does come up where you need it, she's still going to be good. Whereas Kinemon, like, unless you... there's not many situations where you're going to need him except for that one passive, which is the weakening reduction. So, I don't know. I don't think he's going to stand a test of time quite as much as some characters, but still usable. Still usable. Now we're moving on to the gacha units. This is not a bad batch. There's a couple of characters in here that are really good. Let's start off with Enel. So, Enel is pretty good as a shocker. He is the strongest shocker in the gacha, as far as I know. That's not a limited. I think he does more. He definitely does more than Zenitsu, and I think there's like situations where you can set up and Luck would do more damage, Luck Voltia from Black Clover. But in general, Enel is going to be doing more damage. So make of that what you will. The only thing is the other two characters are in the choice ticket and they're in the standard gacha. So there is a chance that you might have them at higher skill levels. But going forward, I think Enel is just going to be a better option as a shock front line. So there's really no downside to him as a front line. He's a very good shock unit as a front line. His support. Said it earlier in the video, not a big fan of the double boosters. I'm sure there are situations where you'd set it up and you'd have a max skill Enel sitting on support on one of your characters, and you drop in, you get this massive 72% attack boost for 2 turns. But personally, these are not the kind of abilities I'm going to be pulling for a unit for. I don't, again, you know, the whole thing standing the test of time, I don't think that's going to stand the test of time. I'm not a fan. I could see that some people might be. I'm personally not a fan. I don't like to have to set up my team to have specific classes. And then the passive. The passive is nice because all you got to do is get him to level 8 and he has 10 Vine reduction, which is quite a higher number for a standard gacha unit. And if you connect 3 or more bubbles with this unit, boost his attack by 30%, that's at max level. 3 or more bubbles is not that big of a restriction, but I think it's one of those scenarios where you wouldn't necessarily want to use him on a bursting team unless you were using him as your last line, because, say for example, this isn't a good example, but I was running a team for Katakuri to farm Reiju, and I've got a 3-turn burst for that, because 3-turn burst is very fast, and I didn't have a particularly consistent auto team, so I set up a 3-turn burst. When I do that 3-turn burst, I am only popping bubbles with 1 character in those entire 3 turns. So unless that character is Enel, he is not getting that attack buff. So in those situations, he's not going to be very good. For general use, he's probably going to be quite good because, you know, popping 3 bubbles is not that hard. But I can see why they've put that restriction on him. But the bind at least makes him pretty good. He's definitely going to, going forward, definitely going to see some use as a front line. It's just his support for me just doesn't work. His buddy skill, I just don't like buddy skills like that. That's just me. But like I said, frontline, so good, so good. Let's move on to Crocodile, Sir Crocodile. Oh, he takes up a lot of space. So Crocodile is kind of cool because he inflicts damage. Okay, the damage is pretty much what we expect from standard gacha units. That's fine. But he also reduces attack for 2 turns and gives 2 turns damage reduction for green team members. The reason why this is so good is because, you know, attack reduction is great because it's 5% less damage that you would be taking or whatever. But it doesn't work out like that. It's not 5% off, but it's like the enemy's attack has gone down by 5%, which is good. But also, your damage reduction has gone up by however much, 450 or 550, depending on the level, which is very good. But typically you wouldn't be using him to reduce the enemy's attack because you needed them to do less damage. You'd be doing it so that you could set up another character that does boosted damage to attack down. So he's very good for that because you're not paying a big price for that attack down, because you're still getting the secondary, or not really secondary because the attack down is the secondary ability, but you're still getting that additional ability of the damage reduction, and that's for your whole team. It's not just for him, it's for your whole team if your team is green. So I'm quite a big fan of that ultimate attack, personally. I'm quite a big fan. His support, he creates a skill bubble and then he absorbs a skill bubble. This is becoming quite a common archetype, and like I said, I think, have we reviewed one of these units before? I don't know, but the characters that do this are going to have some long-term use, simply because there is always going to be a situation where you might be worried that you mess up a burst or whatever. If you have a character like this, they will guarantee your buffer is going first. You can guarantee your buffer goes first by using Crocodile on your buffer. And or you might want to do it with your weakener instead, depending on which team setup you have. But the point is that you can make sure that you're getting optimal damage output from your team by using Crocodile and making sure that character goes first. And then you don't have to worry about the direction you're bursting in and whether one of the bubbles isn't going to get popped or one of the bubbles will get popped out of order or whatever. So I really like him for that. Really like that support. Quite common, but you know. And additionally, boost recovery and ultimate attack damage. I say it's quite common. It's becoming quite common. There's a few characters with that ability now. For 2 turns, boost the recovery and ultimate attack damage for green team members by a small amount. Not bad. Not bad all in all. What you really want him is for the first part of the ability, so the extra recovery and ultimate attack damage is just gravy. It's just a little bit more, a little bit extra. And then his passive skill reduces shock damage by 4,000. As far as I know, only Crocodile and Mitsuri Kanroji reduce shock by that much. So that's very nice. And when attacked by an enemy following turn, boost this unit's attack by 24%. As far as conditionals go, a lot of PvE stages you're getting attacked almost every turn. So that's pretty good. All in all, I think Crocodile's a pretty good unit. I just really like the way his ultimate attack is structured, because you're still getting that attack down and you're getting the damage reduction, plus his damage isn't suffering too much for it. So yeah, I think he's very usable, and he doesn't rely on one specific gimmick or immunity to fit into a team. And I really like that about him. So hey, as far as that goes, pretty good. And I should also point out, I do have some of these units. I have an L, I have a Crocodile, and I have Kazuki Oden. I know what you're thinking. It's like, I thought you said you weren't going to pull. Well, I got Crocodile from the sale ticket. I got an L from the log pose. And then for Kazuki Oden, I caved and did a 500 multi, and I got very lucky. So, so I'm pretty happy. I got as much as I could have expected out of this event, so not too bad. But let's talk about one of the units I don't have, which is Rob Lucci. Now, I love Rob Lucci's kit. I love it. And the reason I love it is because he's quite similar to... his frontline is quite similar to Kanika Man, in that he's gonna rinse through guard. He's gonna rinse through guard. But the reason he's so good is because he's gonna be doing this much damage to enemies with guard. He is then going to ignore that guard and inflict an additional he inflicts damage that ignores guard. So that damage is just gonna cut straight through the guard. And then, because they are guarding, he's gonna inflict an additional 80% damage. And these characters just melt through certain stages. He's going to be good for Katakuri, obviously, if you haven't beaten that already. But he's also going to be good for stages like Akuma Shogun, if you haven't beaten the Catastrophe or whatever. He's going to be good for that. So, I like characters that, like, it's like, oh, he does this one thing, but this one thing he's very, very good at. So, I really dig that. His support, for 1 turn, reduce the number of bubbles required to create a skill bubble by 2, and it goes up to how much by 4. Again, like I said, the 1 turn, the 1 turn I don't like. The 1 turn I don't like. But he also gives you 4 turns ultimate attack damage boost for blue team members. One particular reason why this might be good, say for a Unity battle, a lot of people are setting up their... Would it be good for Unity battle? Yeah, it would. Some of the Unity battles will charge your skills for you. And if they do that, then on the 4th turn, you can use Lucci. And then on the 3rd turn, they charge your skills, and you can use Lucci again, and you'll still have that boost at the end when you're bursting. So that's pretty cool. There are scenarios where it'd be good. Obviously, it's good in the sense that you can just use it, and for 4 turns, you'll do more damage anyway. I think the only thing that lets it down is the 1 turn reduction. That's it. If it had just been 2 turns, would have been good, but it's just 1 turn. And then, why has that become so common, the 1 turn reduction? I know it's essentially just negate extension, but it just seems so silly. It seems so silly. And his passive is an unconditional ultimate attack damage boost and an unconditional damage reduction. Very nice. He is, bro. He is so good for some of these guard stages. He is so good. But that's just my opinion. I do like the fact that his passive is completely unconditional. He's giving you that damage reduction on himself regardless. He's boosting his ult with that damage regardless. But he is just going to melt through Katakuri if you haven't done that already. So nice. I kind of wish Katakuri had a catastrophe so that you could see what kind of damage Lucci would do, but obviously he doesn't have a catastrophe because Reiju doesn't have a costume. So, is what it is. Moving on to the final standard gacha unit, Charlotte Katakuri. Now, my opinion on Charlotte Katakuri is basically that that support is nuts. That support is nuts. Let's talk about his frontline first. The frontline is gonna see some use for sure. I've said this before. My issue is when the enemy counters a specific like class, I feel so restricted in how I can use the characters. Like, say for example, take for example Katakuri. Okay, so he reduces cyclone damage by 3,800, which is a lot, and it goes up to 4,800, which is a lot. So you're thinking, oh, he'd be great for Ryzen. I can use him on Ryzen stage, but an additional 80% damage is locked behind the fact that you need to be attacking a tank class enemy, which Ryzen is not. So you're just losing damage there. So it's really frustrating because you could have been doing 510% damage for a standard gacha unit against Ryzen, and you would have had the cyclone damage reduction as well, plus an unconditional attack boost. He would have been perfect for it, except no, because it's only against tank class. I'm not a fan of that way of doing things for me. For me, that's not great. But he does have a one-turn damage reduction of quite a high amount. Yeah, I think he would have been great for Ryzen if it wasn't restricted to tank class. His buddy skill, though. His buddy skill is super PvP oriented, but it is incredible for PvP. Obviously, this only really applies if you're going to use burn units, as I said before, if you're going to be using Tanjiro, because he inflicts this new debuff, Burn Weakening, that functions basically exactly the same as Weakening, except for burn instead of for all damage. The reason why you would want this over normal Weakening is because any Legend Summon, any support skill, whatever, that removes Weakening, or any character that has Weakening immunity, does not have immunity to this. So he is going to make Tanjiro do more damage. He's going to absorb 2 skill bubbles. He's going to boost his buddy's attack bonus. He's pretty damn good for PvP. I think he's pretty damn good. Again, if you're going to be using a burn unit. If you're not, then he's not that great. If you are, he's sort of a must-have as far as standard gacha units go. And he's the only character of his kind right now. There's going to be other characters in the future. We know for a fact they have in the files Shock, Cyclone, and Freeze Weakening, as well as Poison Weakening and Bomb Weakening. So you're going to see more out of other characters like Rao, Avan, Killua, all these other characters do these other types of debuffs. So until then, while he's the only one of his kind, very desirable unit, especially for me. I've got Tanjiro. I'd love to have Katakuri. Unfortunately, I didn't pull him. But as far as the front line goes, he'll be good for a very specific set of stages. I mean, he's good in the sense that if the stage has Cyclone damage, he's going to reduce it. He's going to make that stage a little bit more manageable for you. I just hate having that extra damage logged behind a class thing. I hate it so much. So finally, the limiteds. Let's start off with Kaido. Kaido was the first limited to come out, so we'll start with Kaido. Kaido is, like I said, I'm not a fan of this. If the target is balance class, why? Why? I know there's loads of characters that do this, and I think it's quite common amongst yellow characters now that I think about it, because I think Netero does it as a yellow limited, Boa does it as a yellow limited, and Kaido now does it as a yellow limited. I hate it though. I hate it. But he's obviously going to be good for his stage that he counters, which is... Hang on a minute. What stage does he counter? Oh, Luffy Taro. He's good for that stage. He's going to be good for the catastrophe on that. And he gives himself a 2-turn ultimate attack damage boost, which is alright, even if it's only by a small amount. But, like, look, he's doing 500% damage. That's huge. Like, he's got usability in the sense that he's unlimited, so he's going to be doing huge damage anyway. But having that extra damage locked behind the class is so annoying. His support, very, very nice. Very, very nice. Creates a skill bubble with boosted base damage. Converts some bubbles to yellow, so it gives you a bit of board control. And gives you a 3-turn appearance rate boost. Very, very nice. And it's only on an 8-turn cooldown at max. Obviously, you got to use skill gems or whatever, support gems to get him up to level 12. But so worth it. So worth it if you pull Kaido, because you're getting a skill bubble, which is already good. Like, you know, even standard like event units do that. But it's boosted base damage. It gives you up to 5 red bubbles at max skill converted to yellow, and gives you an appearance rate boost. Now, why is that appearance rate boost so good? And it's 4 turns at max level. The reason is because there's a few different ways you can use it. You could just like use this ability, pop the skill bubble, and just have like a load of yellow bubbles on your board now. Or, you know, you could use it as part of an initial burst leading into a second burst. So say, for example, any stage that has 2 health bars where they don't wipe your buffs in between health bars, you'll do your initial burst, and then during the start of the board being reset for the second health bar, you get 4 turns of yellow appearance boost. That's pretty damn good. For me, that's his standout like signature thing that makes him very good. But do you want to pull for a limited just for their support skill? I think most people will want to pull for a limited for their main abilities. So, but again, I've said this before, standing the test of time. I think he's going to stand the test of time better than some other units, because that support is going to last a lot longer than some character that does a lot of damage. So, I'm going to say. His support, his passive reduces the number of bubbles to negate by 12. That's a lot. And boosts his attack by a small amount, goes up to 25%. Unconditional, very nice. Bro, I hate these units that only have a buff for a couple of turns during specific turns of the adventure. I get that there's like probably a reason for that. I mean, obviously in this particular case, you couldn't have that on unconditional, it'd be too powerful. But you could have made it like weaker, or made it something else and then not had it turn restricted. The turn restriction is so annoying because this is a limited unit. You're paying to have this super powerful unit, and he's only good for turns 2 to 4 out of the adventure. That's obviously not true. He's very good for usage in terms of any stage that has bind, that has a blue boss. Any stage that has bind, he's going to be pretty good for. Unconditional attack boost, pretty good. And if the enemy happens to be balanced class, even more damage. He's boosting his own normal attack damage. He's good. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He is good in the sense that he is a powerful unit. But my God, why are these turn restrictions? Why do they need to be here? I don't understand. Anyway, as far as a unit, I'd say Kaido, once again, powerful. I just don't like his kit. That's just, for me, I don't like his kit. I love his support. And I would definitely get good use out of his support if I owned him, which I don't. Which I don't. And then finally, Kazuki Oden. Lots of talk about Kazuki Oden. Because he's very special. He's a very special character. And his abilities. Let's talk about his abilities. So, his ultimate attack might look familiar. His ultimate attack is very similar to Deku and Eri. the other limited from My Hero Academia. Not wait, there's 3 limiteds from My Hero Academia now. One of the limiteds from My Hero Academia. It should be said though, one of the downsides to using characters that use counter is that counter has a lot of counters. There are a lot of ways to kind of nullify what a character is doing in terms of counter damage. So in that regard, he's a little bit limited. But generally speaking, like I've been using Deku, and it's like even when I click on the random bosses in PvP, it doesn't really matter. You can still do good damage with Deku, so there's no reason why you couldn't do the same with Odin. You can still win lots of matches with him, and I mean he's good. He's good because he's similar to Deku and Eri, and that's good. I'm gonna skip over the buddy skill for now and talk about the passive. You might notice that his passive is a bit weird because this part is almost identical to Deku and Eri's, but instead of an immunity, he only has a reduction, and Deku and Eri reduce bubble extension with no condition. Odin reduces it by 2, but only when your HP is 60% or more. Deku and Eri, I think, reduce it by 1, but it's unconditional. The reason why I think they've done this is because Odin, despite the fact that on paper he might not look better than Deku and Eri, he is better than Deku and Eri for the simple reason that he is a different class to them. See, he is... I haven't written down his class, god damn it. Well, basically, Deku and Eri have less HP than Odin. Because Odin is a special class, he has extra HP, almost I think it's like 1,000 more HP. It might be a bit less than that. But because his damage is HP based, that kind of means that he's just better. He is just a better option for them. So, something to bear in mind, that's probably why his passive seems a little bit weird compared to theirs. And as for the weakening compared to the attack reduction, it's just different ways of handling some of the things that happen in PvP. If an enemy is going to inflict weakening on you, this is going to be very, very good, because you don't want to be weakened in PvP, because you're going to take massive damage. So just reducing it by 2, very good. Very, very good. Not to say that attack down reduction is bad, but I think this is very, very good. But moving on to his buddy skill. His buddy skill is... well, it's huge. It's huge. For one reason. They released a buddy skill very similar to this for Endeavor, and they ended up changing it. For Endeavor, it wasn't shock, it was cyclone damage. And the reason they changed it was due to community backlash. Fans were not happy. And I think the complaint mainly came down to the use of Rao in PvP. Because he was the Cyclone unit. They even had a Cyclone event up to try and get people to play PvP with Cyclone units. And he suddenly had this unit in the limited gacha that countered his ability. It just straight up, he was specifically made to counter his ability. And people weren't happy about that. But realistically, Odin does the same thing. Now, as far as I can recall, the only character that does Rao levels of damage with shock instead of Cyclone is Godspeed Killua. And I don't think people use Godspeed Killua as much as they use Rao. But, strictly speaking on paper, while I think Rao has a better passive, much better in fact, their damage is not that far apart. So the fact that Killua, who is a much older unit, he comes from 5 months before Rao came out, the fact that he now has a direct counter in the form of Kazuki Odin kind of makes me think they're Freeze, that's it. Freeze is the forgotten debuff, but Shock is slowly becoming a debuff that is gonna be, I don't know, a little bit disappointing. Unless they're gonna release a new unit that does massive shock damage, and then they're gonna. I mean, there's very possible like we could get a new unit that does massive shock damage and a new character that does shock weakening, and then suddenly, hey, shock's back in the meta. Right now, I think it's kind of underserved. I know we've got a Nell this event, but he's only a standard gacha. Like, you need a limited to make shock viable in PvP again. Not to say that it's going to be completely unusable. Killer is still obviously going to be usable, but if you come up against anybody running Odin in support, you're going to be pissed. You're going to be pissed. I think maybe part of the concern might have been... I don't actually remember. Let me double check what Endeavor's front line's like, because I don't actually remember. My Hero Academia. There we go, Endeavor. Negates the strongest attack boost and ultimate attack boost on all enemies. Reduces curse. See, the thing is, Endeavor is not like other. Obviously, his main ability of reducing ultimate attack damage boost does and attack boost too does make him good for PvP, but his passive doesn't do anything in particular to make you think, oh yeah, this is a PvP exclusive unit. Whereas Odin, his abilities, his ultimate attack and his passive are very clearly both geared towards PvP. So if you have Kazuki Odin, you're probably not going to run him in support. You're almost definitely going to run him as a front line in PvP. And I think maybe that's the reason why some people would say that this is okay, because less people are going to be using it, maybe? I don't know. But I don't know why there's like a like a big like outrage for Endeavor and there's not for Odin. Regardless, it's a very nice support. It creates a skill bubble with good base damage. It's only on a 7-turn cooldown, not that that matters for PvP, and it reduces shock. There might even be some stages where you get shocked by the enemy, where he's going to be reducing shock, giving you a skill bubble 120% base damage, and then 7 turns later he's going to be doing the exact same thing. I like Odin. I think he's a good unit. I think he's got good abilities, and I'm happy he does, because he's kind of really special in the sense that this is the most recent character that has ever been added to the game from a series. You know, he was only really like featured, and his like quotes and stuff, they're only from February, and it's only July now. So what, 4 or 5 months ago, depending on where exactly, because I think his arc ended in March. So like 4 or 5 months ago. It's really nice. It's really refreshing. It's something a little bit different, because they could have so easily done another limited Luffy, another like whatever, and they haven't. I'm really happy with this event. I'm really happy with this batch. As far as the strongest characters coming out of it, if you like PvP, Kazuki Odin obviously stands out. As far as the free units, Luffy Taro I think is very strong. And the standard gacha doesn't really have any units that are bad. They just have a few characters that don't have optimal abilities for me. I think you've got a lot of good units there. But if you're going to do anything at this event, try your best to get a 99 luck Luffy Taro. Try your best. And while you're at it, at least evolve your Usopp and get into 99 luck. Even if you don't intend to use him, because Luffy Taro is going to come back. Vivi is going to come back. Reiju is going to come back. Sogeking, he might not come back for quite a while. So at least do yourself a favor and do that. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this this unit review, this batch review. It was quite a long one. Oh my god, I just looked at the recording time. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time.